this plan is something people can find on the city's Parks and Rec website
Not yet.
as well?
Not yet.
Soon though.
Because we're still in development. It hasn't been adopted yet.
So
Like-
they'll be able to find that information after it's been adopted?
Once it's been adopted, obviously they can find anything that we've put out publicly, which is at this time a lot, for the most part, is a bunch of slide decks. But as the plan comes out and it's adopted by the commission, it would then, yes, be available to the public. We would make the adjustments annually that would be updated and put out to the public as well. So that's something that we will continually go through as we live out this plan.
So 20 years down the road, we're going to have an indoor aquatic center. What else?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, to say that we will have it.
Right? That's the hard one, right?
Well, I mean, so
There's so many.
hypothetically speaking, we adopt the plan with the indoor aquatics in some form or fashion. We would have to turn around and get some sort of financial support, not only to construct it, but to operate it. And some of the price growth we've seen in the SECO project, we're anticipating that being a much bigger number than we originally thought it was for Move MHK. So we'll have to phase this out in a way. Just again, there are limited resources. Even if we pass a new sales tax or something like that to fund this, there are limited resources for us, and so we'll have to be cognizant of how to phase this out in a way that makes sense. That we're not dumping everything into aquatics and potentially a rec center, but we're also addressing the needs of the parks and the trails and some of the other items that will be included in these park concept plans. So I would encourage people to look out for Northeast Park and what we're trying to do there with the addition of athletic fields and those kind of things. Bringing that to the east side to alleviate some of the burden off of Annenberg, which is really being heavily utilized right now, which isn't the worst thing except for parking. And so we need to pull some of that stress out of there. SECO will help when it opens up, and we're tentatively scheduling that for spring of 26, summer of 26.
Right.
So that will help some. And if we can get some development on the east side, we can spread that around. Again, we would want to attack the park concept plans in addition to just constructing a facility. So making sure that we're being very fiscally responsible and implementing this in a way that makes sense will definitely have to be phased out because there is a big price tag to this.
Yeah, not something that you can just overnight, we're going to have that tomorrow.
No, the reality is, and you know, there's a discussion around pool closures, and there is a financial discussion that needs to happen, and I think people are assuming that we're talking next year, and the reality is we're talking multiple years down the road. And so if we were to move ahead with the current concept in City Park, we'd really be talking about another 10 years before we even think about closing City Pool. Probably 2035 at the earliest, more likely 2040, because we're going to have to put in a new outdoor pool to replace that one before we shut it down.
Right.
Northview and SECO, if they were to get closed down because of financial reasons, then you would really be looking probably 2045, 2050 before that actually happens, because again, we would need the money, we would need to raise the capital to invest in the replacement. Now, a lot of people will get up in arms when we talk about this, and I'm not saying we go down that path. What I'm saying is we got to have the financial discussion. We already have more square feet of water per capita than any other place in the state. We have about twice as much water as our national standards suggest that we should. But more importantly, how much are we going to subsidize our water by? And so currently, for 11 weeks, we're spending $1.1 million for 11 weeks of subsidy. That's tax dollars. To put it another way, it's $100,000 a week to operate the current pools that we have. That's a lot of money. If you add indoor water, that immediately jumps to about $2 million. So $2 million in a tax subsidy. Again, as they age, those prices go up. So where's our limit? Is it 3 million? Is it 4 million? Is it 5 million? And wherever that is, what are we not doing in order to fund just aquatics? And most of them only being for 11 weeks a year. So that's where the discussion lies. It's not that we want to try to take away people's amenities or or their pools, the reality is we have a limited financial resources. If we keep those open, what are we not going to do in place? And that's a future discussion, but it needs to be laid out. It needs to kind of be identified in the plan. So as we approach that year 10, year 15, and we're planning out pretty heavily in those next 10 years, we're ready to have that discussion and potentially do either a closure or understand how we're going to better create the financial support to continue to operate. Maybe it's not both of them, maybe it's one of them, who knows? At the end of the day, it's a financial discussion.
That's a lot for people to keep in mind. That's a lot that you get to deal with too.
Yeah.
Just having to think about all of that.
Well, again, I think, I grew up in the system. That's one of the reasons I do what I do is Annenberg was brand new when I was a kid. And I will never forget, I was actually telling Ron Fear this when we were meeting right before his retirement.
Right.
I will never forget playing flag football out there for the first time and how smooth the field was, the way the grass was cut, and how I just felt like a big leaguer. It made me feel like a big leaguer. Now, my background's in athletics, but that's true of anybody. Like, whether it's arts or whether it's sports or whether it's a trail, that feeling can be generated, and it impacts the future. Because the irony is, it's not just me that does Parks and Recreation in my family. My older brother does too. So it had huge impacts on us coming up through this system as children, which eventually led us to our careers. You never know where that next path could lead, but it's providing those amenities and providing these community gathering spaces. And that's really what we're trying to do with the city park plan, is really create a community gathering space that will long-term impact people's health, what they choose to do in life, their social connections, and really give a central gathering place to everybody. So that's really what we're after in a lot of what we're doing, but in particular at City Park, because unfortunately right now, outside of the playground, the pool, and the ice arena, it's used as a parking lot.
Yeah.
And the heat map will show that in our presentation tomorrow.
Yeah, you kind of want your park to be used for more than just parking lot.
We definitely do. We want part of this promenade idea in the central plaza in the park is to create a gathering point and activate the middle of the park with people. There's a passive side of the park on the west side that's kind of this open green space area. And then we're going to get into some sport courts, obviously the facility in there, skate park. But the central plaza, this historic area where we can tell the story of the history of City Park. Most people don't know it started as a racetrack.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And I've lived for my whole life. Huh?
And the Historical Society's got a lot of great information, including the Pioneer House out there. And there's a story to tell. But we should be telling the story of, say, like Jesse Baker. Granted, he's got a field named after him, but we don't really know his story and what his impact was on youth sports. So there are a lot of stories out there that can be told in this historic zone. The other thing we've created is what we call an event lawn, and it's basically a festival space that would sit adjacent to the outdoor theater or the outdoor stage. And we have an opportunity to increase what that looks like, and there's an event plaza with that, which would be prime for things like food trucks. And so we create this gathering space in the middle of the park that doesn't really currently exist.
Right.
So.
Yeah, you bring in those food trucks for those events, and you've got to hope that you can get them arranged just right on the existing.
Yeah, and this would lay them out perfectly.
Yeah, see, there's all these cool things. People just have to be patient and understand all the things that go on behind the scenes to get to that. So.
Yeah, I think, assuming everything would go our way, I say our way, assuming everything would line up and people agreed to fund it,
right.
It would, we're probably talking 2030 before we would open the doors on an aquatic center.
Yeah.
There's, as much as we want to have immediate satisfaction, that's just not possible when you're talking this kind of dollars and volume.
Yeah.
The design will take 2 years. So